Hey guys, welcome back to the Homework Assignment Podcast. We're really excited today, and we're really happy that Brad's here to join us. Brad the owner of AFT Construction. If you guys haven't seen their stuff, you're going to be able to click the links below, check out their entire portfolio, all the production, all the media content that they're dropping. It's honestly, it's everywhere. It's outrageous, and it's some really cool stuff. And we're really excited to have you on, so thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks, RJ. Excited to be here.
So Brad, tell us a little bit about who is AFT Construction?
Yeah, so our formal name is Finer Touch Construction. You know, it's kind of a long name there, so we go by AFT. Most of our social channels, they know us through social media as AFT. And essentially, we're a luxury builder in the greater Phoenix area, right? So Scottsdale, North Phoenix, Cave Creek, down here to Gilbert, where we're at right now, and serve most of the Phoenix area, from a custom building standpoint. When we started, it's funny to see how, companies pivot. So like early on, we did probably heavier commercial than residential. Now it's swung the other way that we're heavier residential than commercial, and definitely have shown kind of the automation, the organization, that customer experience. And so, our process adapts really well to like the high-end clientele who are used to a certain amount of service and communication and process. And we spent a lot of time kind of, working on that process for our clients. So
that's awesome. So you used to do a lot of commercial. What's the difference between commercial and residential? Is it the clientele mostly?
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a different mentality in a few ways, right? When you're in commercial, and don't get me wrong, like we've done some pretty nice commercial stuff over the years. And no matter at what level of the spectrum you're building, from a budget standpoint, we'll call it in commercial, at the core, there's still a time, right? Time is the big value there, because whether you're working for a hotel, whoever the end operator will be, a restaurant, brewery, I mean, it could be anything. Like there's a time frame that they need to be open because they're investing and now they need to start generating revenue. So that time frame becomes really important. And they don't, even though they may have nice finishes to some extent, they don't get lost in the details of how a trim detail is terminating in a certain part of the build. Residential, it's a lot more emotional, right? The clients travel, they have inspiration. This could be, their life's work investment into their personal home. It could be a second or third home. Regardless, they still have a level of execution and quality and detail. It's a little bit more emotional. There's a more personal touch working on their powder bath as opposed to community bath like at a commercial place. So it's just that level of hand-holding, relationship, communication. It's the client's definitely more involved, on a residential build.
So let me ask you to dig a little bit more into this. So when I started our company, I had some family that were in construction and stuff, and some friends and uncles and whatnot, and they always were try to get me to go more commercial because they're like, it's just easier and it's like you have less worry with the client, kind of like what you're talking about. No one really cares that much about the details like they would on residential. They still care, but it's a little bit different, right? So why did you guys choose to go to residential if you were already kind of doing quite a bit of commercial?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Before I started my company, I worked for a high-end commercial company. I mean, we did high-end luxury. We worked on the Omni Mauna Lucia, is probably one of the most signature projects that I worked on in Paradise Valley on Lincoln and Tatum. And so we kind of worked in a more luxury brand, but keep in mind, commercial, one of the big separators, and I always laughed that in residential, it's like the Wild West, right? So when you go into commercial, you're dealing with subcontractors that are super established. A lot of our subcontractors had 200-300 employees.
Yeah, big companies.
Yeah, you go to residential, they may have 4 or 6, the husband and wife, or, the owners of the company are typically working in the company. And so where I'm getting at is on the commercial side, it's very system driven, right? System, protocol, project management, like that whole experience is totally different, how they're mapping it out. And, so because we had a background doing that and we had a lot of understanding, and a lot of my team has worked in high-end commercial, that process now bleeds into residential. And so we've kind of found this niche where on the residential side, especially as you're getting into the high dollar product, our clients expect that, right? They've ran companies, most of them are successful entrepreneurs, and they expect that same level of service that they had building their company from their builder. The old days of, the pickup truck builder doesn't really equate to what the client's expecting now. And so how we kind of got into this niche was that, we have over the years with the software we use and the staff that we have, that we've really worked on our systems and automation and communication, and that's kind of integrated into bringing in that high-end clientele that, if anything, kind of gives them a taste of what it's like having a commercial project. However, it's applicable to like a residential high-end build.
Okay. That's awesome. So I think something that goes around that I want to touch base on that every business owner really deals with, whether they're in construction or not, is the clients that maybe sometimes when there's an issue or whatnot, there's a problem, and some clients are very hard to handle. And the reason I'm bringing that up is I noticed in my company, as we grow in revenue and we grow up to some of those higher end homes, you mentioned that the homeowners are a lot more emotionally involved into it, right? So when something goes wrong, sometimes it's really big, and it's really hard to put ourselves in the client's shoes. And like us, I'm like, hey, I know there's a solution here. I get it. I understand it. But they're just over the top, just upset about it. How do you handle clients that may, or an upset client, so to speak, in your business at the level you're at?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think empathy and just business and life in general, right? Any relationship, whether it's your spouse, kids, coworkers, employers, or I'm sorry, customers, like empathy goes a long way to really understand, right? And being around other entrepreneurs, like, the value of listening becomes really important. Not just listening, but coming into meetings prepared, like, hey, what do you want to get out of this meeting, right? And setting that standard so that everyone kind of communicates their goals. But to answer your question, like I just had this morning where I met with a client this morning on the empathy side, understanding kind of why they're in this position, hearing them out. And I've always been in a position where, we never want to make decisions for our clients. We never want to spend our clients' money. For us, it's always about presenting options for our clients and then letting them make the decision, right? But really, at the core of where these relationships go sideways, at least in my experience over the last 11 years owning my business, is that typically we've failed at some point to set clear expectations. And whether it's in pre-construction or the build, not having clear expectations with the client leads to these issues. And so we've really worked on understanding. I think as a builder, you have to understand what it takes from that initial phone call, the inquiry, right, to the client moves in. And then you're servicing them after. But what does that journey look like? Like, what are all the steps? You have to map that out and really understand it. And then from there, you can build the communication channels, the process, the decision making to really keep the client on task, because our whole job as a builder is to be the guide, right? Take them through this really tough experience. And so if we understand what it takes to build a home and we can communicate that effectively and lay that out, it'll prevent a lot of those issues. And then have operating procedures that we don't break, right? Like for me, I'm not going to do a project without an interior designer. So I know that if I deviate from that, it's going to cause issues because I've already been through this before. And so we have to have standard protocol, and then we're leading our client to explain to them the value of certain consultants and professionals, and to make that a better process.
Right. Yeah, I think, touched on that, like when a few years ago, when I would work with clients, I always felt like it was one side of the client. It was like, you're the general contractor and you need to do this. And like, I expect you to provide everything in the full service. Rather now we know and understand that it's a team effort. Like there's so much responsibility on the client side, figuring out what they want, understanding what they want, related, transferring that over to us so we can provide it. And when there's not that good communication on both sides, the whole project just kind of goes array, right? So,
well, it's funny because, to your point, RJ, I look back at my experience, and you don't know what you don't know. So, client comes in saying, RJ, will you do this? And you're like, yeah, no problem. And then you're like, okay, I just put myself in a horrible position.
Yes, yeah.
And that's happened to me so many times because you just don't know. But where I'm getting at is that once you understand risk, cost, time frame, all these different aspects, it's easy for me when a client has a concern about something, I can communicate effectively because I understand, hey, if we don't do this, here's what's going to happen. Because I've already experienced that, right? Or my peers have that I network with. So networking is powerful. But, we know the red flags, we know the issues, we know the pitfalls of a build. And so if something starts going sideways, we can call timeout, and meet with the client, or at least address it so it doesn't get to that point.
Right.
It's just the problem is, as a new builder, you just don't know until you learn that you've made the mistakes and you've paid for those mistakes. But at least now, with the team we have, we understand what that process looks like, and so we can lay it out better for the client.
So you're being proactive rather than reactive, right? And I think that's a big, important process in every business that a lot of people miss out on. They just kind of wait, and then the problem arises, and they solve it, but then they don't do anything to proactively avoid that situation going forward, and then they continually go through that cycle, right?
Yep.
So, well, kind of a precursor, going back a little bit, you're talking about, how you deal with your wife and clients or your family as well. So how is your business, how does the way you run your business correlate with the way you run your household and vice versa? Do they intersect? Is there, you know what I mean? Like how does that?
That's a good question. I think those that know me tease me in the sense that, I think, most of us that are entrepreneurs are pretty A-type. Like that's going to be part of it. So you have the A-type side, and then we're typically delegators in some way.
Yeah.
It could be bossy at some points. They tease me that I'll do it with a smile, like I'll smile at someone as I'm bossing them around. And so that doesn't always equate to like personal life, my wife and kids, like there has to be a whole different approach. So for me, there's definitely a different hat you're wearing at work as opposed to what you're wearing at home. And you have to find the balance. And the problem as an entrepreneur, just being realistic, is that it bleeds over, right? There's never a clean break between, I just got done with work, I'm leaving it there, clocking out and going in the house.
Yeah.
Especially as the owner of a business, it just, it doesn't turn off. So you just have to find the balance, understand, who needs the attention at home, and put a focus there and communicate differently than I would at the office. And so, you just kind of learn, I'm older now, so it helps having been, in my profession for 20 years now to kind of understand, how to balance that a little bit more.
So for a entrepreneur that's trying to find a better balance or trying to figure out how to have some sort of balance, where do they start? Do they start in the business, getting that organized, or do they start in the household? Like, what advice do you have there?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, the reality is you have to understand, like, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, like, it doesn't shut off. Like, even if you get to the point where you're hiring people, you still have the stress and anxiety of, right, backlog and sales and execution and turnover and everything that comes with running a company. So as an entrepreneur, it's definitely going to be poorly balanced in the beginning because you're wearing a lot of hats, right? You may not have the revenue, you may not have the ability to hire people yet to take some of those responsibilities. But even if you're a one-person show, at the beginning, you should still understand that org chart, right? If you're wearing all the hats, understand when you touch each hat and what that role is. Write it out, understand that scope of work, so that as you hire, you can delegate that off and really have clear distinction. Where most companies fail is that when they're hiring that baton, there's too much overlap, there's too much double work, there's no clear, concise information on what that job scope is for the employee, and people get frustrated, right? It's hard to retain people. And so getting back to the balance side, I mean, you're never going to have balance in the beginning. Ideally, you can find some sort of balance, but that balance is still kind of a weird word because, as an entrepreneur, you're always involved in the business, always, and it won't change. And so, you may have some more flexibility in the years to come where middle of the day, you're going to a kid's sporting event, maybe you have some extra vacation that year to spend with the family, but at the same point, you get back to the hotel at night and you're working right when the kids are asleep, or you're up early before the family's awake. And so you're balancing, that differently later as opposed to just grinding in the office or the field, for those first couple of years.
How was your first couple of years?
Yeah, probably similar to most people. I mean, it's like, when you're starting a young company, you're trying to figure out, first you have to get work, which is really tough. And you have to get people to take a chance on you being new in business. You have to, you really, at least for me, I didn't really understand, my value. I didn't understand how to price a job properly. And I knew how to price it from the subcontractor side to make sure as a general, where we have all the costs. It's just what my fee should be, my costs, to run this and actually make a living, to make sure I'm covering my overhead. And so that's the biggest struggle, is that you're wearing a lot of hats. So I'm trying to do marketing. I'm trying to do accounting to some extent. I'm in the field running projects as a superintendent. I'm trying to do business development. So you're just wearing all these hats. You're doing so many things. And so that's pretty common for everyone. And then you get to the point where you can make a hire, another hire. But even then, I mean, it takes years to where you can really get that momentum, and the right people, and then start training, and then really start evaluating, the company organization.
Okay. So how long has AFT been in business?
So in March, in 2 months, we'll hit 11 years. So we started March 20,
awesome.
2013.
That's awesome.
So
what advice for people that are starting their journey in business? Because obviously we've all been there. And looking back, we probably really wish we knew what we know now, like everybody else does. What advice do you have for people starting out in a business or starting a business, but also starting a family at the same time?
Okay, maybe we'll just look at the business side first. So if you're starting a business, I'd say no matter what your business is, the something that, call it the light bulb hits on, whatever. It took me a long time to understand that I'm a business owner that happens to focus on construction. And that took a long time to understand, is that in any field, whatever it is, you need to understand the business. And this goes back to, like, since I'm in construction, I need to understand what that roadmap looks like for my client. But more importantly, what does it look like for me and my company? How do we meet payroll? How do we succession plans down the road? Like, you have to understand the business side of running the company, because there's always a saying that, like, a really good builder that's bad at business will always fail, right?
Interesting. Yeah.
And a bad builder who's good at business will always stay in business. And so ideally, we're all going to be good builders, but at the core of it, you have to understand business, and that's where most companies fail. And so from the business side, you have to understand that. Now, going back to the question of, like, that balance side, it's just really tough to have a balance and understand how to wear both those hats. It's just going to be, you have to understand that if you're going entrepreneur, when you're an employee, you kind of just see your box, right? There's maybe different areas of the company you're touching, but you don't see the whole picture. I didn't as an employee, and I thought I did, and I didn't. But the minute you're an owner, you're over everything. And so you just have to understand that there is a sacrifice, because you only have so many buckets that you can put, that you can fill up. And so if I'm filling up this bucket, I can't do here. So there is, especially those early years. I can have a whole lot of time. Like, it's not like you start a company and you just get all this personal time with your family. It just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, there's sacrifice. 100%. So when you first started your company, so obviously, kind of backtracking, you worked for a company, a high-end commercial company, right? And then you, somewhere in between, left that and began AFT, right? So what decisions led you to decide that you actually wanted to build AFT Construction?
Yeah, I think entrepreneurs are either born entrepreneurs or they're forced into it. And so I'll take it that I was forced into it, right? It just, and I've done a podcast on this. I have a YouTube video on this too, on my channel. I did construction management up at BYU, and I finished in 2005, moved to Phoenix, worked for doing production homes here in Gilbert for a year. And then I went to work for the high-end commercial for 5.5 yeyears. And at that time, market was pretty slow. Was planning on going back to get my MBA, so I took the GMAT. I was going back to grad school, and just life's tough. Like, it just, I have a lot of empathy towards anybody. I went through a tough time, and found myself as a single father with 3 daughters at the time, and at the time that I'm supposed to start grad school, and because of that, I just knew it wasn't an option, being a single dad, to say, okay, I'm going to go bring my 3 daughters and start grad school. It just wasn't feasible, and I never made it back. And so AFT was started. And, I don't want to say I had reservation, but I knew how hard construction was. And having lived through that recession, 2008, because keep in mind, this is like 2011, 12. AFT started 2013. So, that was 5 years there that I'd...
Wasn't that during the bad market?
It's horrible.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you're a little young, RJ, but for us old guys, 2008 to 13, it was rough. Yeah. It was really hard. And so I knew going into construction, I'm like, stability anyways, but it's what I knew, it's what felt I was good at. And so it was a grind. Like I tell most people, it wasn't, 6 or 7 years of building AFT before we started making headway and momentum, and getting the right people, getting the right projects, and building to what we have today. But, people look at it now, and this is, 20-year journey, overnight success, overnight success over 20 years. Like, it just doesn't happen in a vacuum. There's years of experience there, and it's really the last 4 or 5 years we've taken off, and but those first, 7 were quite the work.
So when you started AFT, was it successful, profiting from
No.
day one?
No. So just like anyone, and that's why I say you got to understand business, because I didn't. I didn't understand all the ins and outs of business and understanding how to leverage, and the value of banking relationships and so many different aspects. So, I mean, look, as a company, I mean, most companies, especially in construction, and not all, it kind of depends. I mean, there's always those variables depending on if you're starting in a good market. I mean, keep in mind, Phoenix was still not a great market.
Yeah.
2013, I mean, Phoenix was so slow to get back, even as the nation was coming back in recovery. I mean, 2017, 2018 was still not that great for most builders in Phoenix, including us. So you're thinking that's 5 years that you're barely grinding through, barely covering payroll, barely covering overhead. And it wasn't until we got some signature projects and then you build on that. And even then, it was a couple years after that you really understand, how to plan. So it just, I wish it was easier, but I will say at that time, this is pre-social media. Instagram hadn't started yet. And so I didn't have the network I have now. Yeah. And I think what the advantage like you, RJ, where you're good, I know that's how we met, is that you're really good about reaching out to other builders and understanding and taking business coaching and all these things that I did not take advantage of that I should have. And had I done that, yeah, we could be in a better position than we were, I'm sure, as a company financially, at that point.
Well, so obviously you had some tough times when you first started your business, right? And everybody does, because it's just part of life. What kept you going through those tough times?
Yeah, I'm a super competitive person. And so at the core of it, it wasn't just competitiveness, but I mean, that is part of it. Mm-hmm. I think there's no doubt a driver. I mean, I fortunately, I was raised in a family where I saw my parents, they were super hard workers, and that work ethic has been instilled in me from a young age. So my siblings are the same, like we're all hard workers and we don't stop. And all my siblings are that way. But I think, when you're, a few things here. One, I love my kids, right? So as the supporter of my children, I had no choice but to be successful. I can't fail, right? I'm raising kids. I mean, at the time when I started AFT, my daughters were, let's think, they would have been, like 9, 7, and 4. So it's like they're little, And so that's a big part of it. But I would say what drove me is that even in the times, those first 5 years when we weren't making money and we weren't getting the project we felt we deserved or could handle, as a strategy, I don't know what it is, and maybe it's just like me personally, but I always have a vision of where we're going as a company and where we're going to be. So even though we're kind of laying the groundwork here, years ago, I had my focus here and then here, and kind of, it's just like anyone who's looking at scaling Everest, right? You're never going to just look at the peak. You're going to look at that next step, but you're going to the peak because the peak's the end goal there, as you get to the summit, but there's these little benchmarks along the way that you're working towards. And so I just knew that I was marketing towards not what we were doing today, but where we're going. And I knew that we would get there because of, client feedback and experience. And it just takes time for that reputation and momentum, to hit on all cylinders. So,
what is the vision for AFT? I'm curious.
Yeah.
Have you gone there, or is there something greater you're going to?
Oh no, yeah, we have our core values and our vision and everything. But I think for me, I'm a builder in every aspect. And what I mean by that, not just a builder of temporal items such as homes and buildings, but building people, right? And building companies. Mm-hmm. So we have different companies we've started, when you think about the streams of revenue there to keep that going, building people. So I look at, our team, we're at 26 employees, and I'm sure to ask any of them, I feel that our company culture is unique to any company in any industry, right? We just don't have really any turnover. People come, they stay, they're part of the AFT family. And so building our people, and I think that's a key success in leadership, is not seeing people as they are, but who they can become. Yeah, and it's the same thing as business, right? Not as your business is, but where it's going to go, and the same with people. And so building people and, letting them discover their superpowers, if you will, and kind of, see them grow through that. That to me is like the legacy. So
not so much building homes, but building people
That's way better.
Businesses.
And I love building homes. Like, don't get me wrong, we built some amazing homes and we work for some amazing clients. But like, when I go to bed at night, like the joy, like we just had our company party, and you know, just to be in that room where you're sitting there and you have 26 employees with their significant others, and you have this company and they're there, and every one of them, including their spouses, like so many of their spouses had reached out to me saying, hey, you know, my spouse, I've seen a change in them since working at AFT.
That's awesome.
Like, they're better at home, they're happier, they're more motivated. You know, I have employees that have been, you know, texting me on going on this, like, you know, we met at the gym, they're like on this health journey that they're going through and getting healthier in their life. To me, that's like the most valuable thing, to see people change their lives and be better people. And I think that it doesn't just happen. I think the core of like our culture, like, everyone's competitive, everyone inspires each other, and everyone's driven to be good family people, good at work, good with clients, and it just bleeds into just a healthy amount of competition and camaraderie.
So obviously with that love for, you know, building people, building businesses, and changing lives, obviously there's the other part of business, which is making money to live. You touch base on that. So how do you... So you talk about your value, right? And this is something everybody that has a business has dealt with at one point, but trying to figure out what you're worth, right? And have you ever felt that you felt like you were charging too much than what you felt you were worth, if that makes sense?
That's a good question. Actually, I probably always charge too less, right? Because like, so I think always to get the job, I charge less. I think now it's probably a healthy balance there. Okay. But what I will say to that point is what I've always, and again, maybe this is the focus of, again, that summit aspect, is that whenever I've hired people, I understand that there's an investment, right? And so employees are assets, not liabilities. And a lot of employers, in my experience, have looked at what they pay people, and they're like, this is a huge cost, I could save money. They look at it as low-hanging fruit, that if you cut that aspect, you're going to make more money. But where they're short-sighted is that when you have good people that are well compensated and committed, the brand's better, because you have people that understand the brand of the company. They are bettering it. You know, I'm sure you can attest that if I have a super that's built 15 homes as opposed to one that's built 3, that one with 15 has been through a lot and can be more efficient, which leads to better projects. And so I've found that when you invest in your people and the right people, that puts you in a position to win better projects. And so for you to continue as a brand, you have to have the right people, right training, and that allows you to qualify for these better projects. And so for me, it's always an investment. You invest in your people, and then that dividend pays down the road with profitability and better projects. And one of the things I've always lived by is, you know, it's 2 things. One, generosity precedes prosperity. Okay. And that goes back to the core of it, right?
Yeah.
And I'll give an example of why that was. And then the second thing is that you chase experience, not money. And so I've always in my career and life just chased experience and opportunity, not money. Money will come, right? And that's true as an employee, like chase the experience, get the talents and the skill set, and that's what I did. And then, you know, that the money will always come down the road. Getting back to when I was young, just out of college, 25, I remember I was working for this production builder. And when you're on a production, I think we had 11 or 12 superintendents, and there were probably like 5 or 6 salespeople that were there selling these semi-custom homes. And one of them was Martin Ono. So like every week, we would meet with our sales reps and kind of go through all the progress of the projects. And they had to bring, their deal was just a requirement that they would bring us breakfast. So 5 of the salesmen would always bring, you know, like a bag of cold egg McMuffins or something, you know, just a couple hash browns, some egg McMuffins, Here you go. We had one salesperson that, like Martin, he would come in and he would have this huge spread. Like at that time it was Paradise Bakery before they brought out, and we'd have like quiches and yogurt parfaits and all kinds of amazing stuff. He would take us to like the Chandler Airport. We'd go to the hangar, you know, for breakfast. And on my birthday, and remember, I'm just out of college, not being paid a lot. It was my birthday. He comes out, gives me a handshake, and he gives me a $100 bill. And he was always like, Brad, generosity precedes prosperity. That was like his mantra. And everybody, like, he was one of the most generous people I've ever met in every way. And people just always worked harder because they could see that. And so I just got to watch that. He motivated me, he motivated those around me to just be better people, because he was just so kind and generous with everything he had. And that led to him always getting the best clients, the best projects, the best sales. He was the number one person in sales. And the differentiator was that he just, there was a generosity, he's a super generous person. Yeah. And as an employer, if your employees feel that you're always going to go to bat with them, that you're always generous, that you're always looking out, that not just from a financial side, but from a personal health and wellness side, they're always going to go to bat for you, which means they're going to bat for your clients. So
that's amazing. And what's interesting is I've heard that before growing up quite a few times. And yet when I began my business journey, I for some reason had it in my mind that money is always a motivator. Mm-hmm. When to get people to work harder, to get people to enjoy the work more, you just got to pay them more. You just got to pay them more. Now I know that statement is so true, because money isn't always a motivator for employees or for people. And a lot of times it's not even the motivator for the business owner. We talk about commissions, right? Like, what's a commission? A commission is a reward or something that's earned for doing something. And that could be having a family, right? Commission for being able to get your wife to marry you. You have children, right? That's a commission. And so when you start breaking it down like that, I think that changes the perspective of every business owner's company, understanding that, hey, money isn't always the answer to things. It's love and generosity, or creating an amazing environment, amazing, team
camaraderie.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Camaraderie. And it's not always the money. The money will always follow. So that's spot on. That's absolutely fantastic.
It's funny because you think about culture of a company. I mean, it really comes down to two things. All the studies that have happened. One, like, your employees have to believe in the brand, so they have to believe in the product, right? Whatever the product is you're selling, they have to have a belief system in what that is, that they're making a difference in whatever way that is. And the second thing is they have to feel valued, right? They have to feel that when they come to work, they know how they're going to be held accountable. They have clear understanding of what their job role is. So if people understand their role, if they understand that they're being held accountable and that they believe in the product and all these things, you can have ideal customer culture. I mean, that just goes, or company culture. Yeah, and then you add on the icing to the core, right? And that is the pay and the benefits and the PTO and the relationship between all of you. I mean, all those things add on, but at the core, that's what employees want. And money is important, but if you create a system or a company where there is that friendship and family feel, and where everyone's working to help each other, and they can come in with ideas, and people actually listen and they're implemented, and people feel heard. I mean, that's really when you really gain so much traction.
So I have a quick question. And this might be more of a personal question, but if there is a key, what is the key to being proud of what you've built and enjoying the benefits of what you've built, which is a successful company, and being seen as prideful, if that makes sense? Mm-hmm. And I'll explain. So I've seen a lot in some of the businesses that my friends have built, and I've experienced this in my businesses. Once you start actually becoming a little successful, and you've gained success in building what you're building, then come some of the benefits, like, hey, well, you're making good money, right? You're getting, people are knowing who you are. You're building your online presence, social media. People are seeing the stuff you're building. You're in magazines. People are paying you money to come in and teach them what you know, right? So a little bit of fame, so to speak. And then it's like, okay, well, now how do you project yourself really enjoying, like, how do I put this? For example, what's your dream car?
And maybe this is easy. I don't have one. Like, it's just, okay. Yeah. And maybe that's a funny answer. I have an F-150. My wife has Expedition, and that's the extent of it,
Okay, so, like, for example, what if your dream car was a Lamborghini? Would you feel weird driving a Lamborghini to your work every day where you have 100%. Your employees? Okay. Yeah. Why? I'm curious as to
why. I think, and it's not that there's anything wrong with driving a Lamborghini, right? Again, right. I don't want this to seem like some pretentious person. I don't know the easiest way to say it. I think at the core, just everyone's different what drives them, right? Mm-hmm. And so for me, as I mentioned, like, my driver is people. So going back to your success thing, I think I'm trying to understand hopefully the question and answer right, but
I didn't really ask.
No, but essentially, I mentioned that for me, my legacy is building people, right?
Right.
And so that's my driver. That at the end of the day, yeah, the money may come, and we ideally have a great opportunity to support my family and my kids, and future of our family, but that's not my driver. That's a byproduct of what we're doing and accomplishing at AFT, right? And so, yeah, at some point, yeah, maybe I do have a Lamborghini. I don't think just me personally, based on how I operate, I wouldn't drive it every day.
Yeah.
But I'm not opposed that if someone's been successful, like they should enjoy the fruits of their labors. I mean, at the end of the day, my clients all do. I'm glad that they do because they invest in nice homes, and that generates thousands of jobs for me, my employees, my subcontractors, suppliers, trade partners. So there's value there on people that are willing to invest and use that.
So do you think enjoying the fruits of your labor affects your relationship with employees as they see that happen?
It can, but I think it can. And I'll answer that because I think I have a little clarity to answer kind of my perspective on that. But it can, and where that can be splintered is, again, what is at the core. And I'll give you a good example. So for me, a couple things. So I may not say, hey, I want to drive a Lamborghini, but I grew up super blue collar, like many of us, right? And none of this was gifted. I had to earn it just like a lot of us do. And so where I grew up super blue collar, like everyone knows I'm a huge Jordan fan. Like, Joe, I wear like 200 pair. Yeah, sneakerhead. But the funny thing is, like, when I grew up, I'd get one pair from Payless Shoe Source. That was my deal. My parents had the funds, and I was the oldest of 6 kids. So every year we get a new pair of shoes. And so for me, that's my thing, is to have nice shoes, because I never had nice stuff, right? Which is okay, but then when you cross that over, so for me, I may not care as much about Lamborghini, but like I love to travel, and I want to travel nice places and go to Europe and go with my family. And maybe there's a bougie element that I want to sleep in the pod, right, as opposed to sit and coach. And so we all have things, right, that drive us. And for me, it's time, it's vacation, it's time with my family. But here's a good example. So for me, I haven't built my own house yet, right? Been in my professional career 20 years. Every builder's building their own house. And for me, I was always putting my focus on the company and building the company and building the people. And we're finally at a position where we're going to break ground on our house in 2 months.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I'm super excited. It's going to be an amazing home, and it'll be a great model home. Like, I kind of wanted to wait till we could do something that's really the equivalent of the stuff we build, a good model home for AFT. I mean, I didn't want to go too early, but really what I'm getting at is that I was a little bit nervous about telling my employees we're building our house, right? Because this goes back to your question.
Right where I was going to.
So I was like, how do I address I'm building my personal house? How's that feedback going to be with my team? And the funny thing is that now all of them know we're doing it. They're all excited. They all want to be involved in some extent of the house. They all want to be at the groundbreaking. And every employee, the feedback has been, we've been building for AFT and for customers. It's finally time that we get to build Brad's house.
That's awesome.
And so I think most employees, if you've built it right and they understand kind of where you, like your goal and your vision, then they will always support that. If I were to drive McLaren, I'm sure all of them would want to just drive it. But keep in mind, there were years there of building that commitment and friendship and leadership and camaraderie and vision and everything that goes into it that now allows them to enjoy us having success, all of us, if that answered it.
That was perfect, because I've listened to I've listened to every single one of your podcasts, obviously. I've listened to Ed Milet, all these great people who have built great companies, and I've never heard people really talk about this. And I always wondered, because it is a thing, right? So no matter what, as a business owner, no one's ever going to earn more than the owner. Period, right? I mean, maybe at certain times because you're investing back in the company, whatever the case is. But for the most part, it's like, man, how do you enjoy some of that? Like you said, like, okay, I'm building my house now. Like, what is my team going to think? So I was really, that was perfect. And again, that was more of a personal question. I was just kind of curious about it. So that was fantastic. So
yeah, and it's interesting. But again, what's tough about construction is, like, if we're to drive a Lamborghini to a client's house, they may not hire us, right? It's just the reality of it. I had a client that I was parked in front of my house and there was a Tesla. It wasn't mine. And the client actually said, if that was your Tesla, I wouldn't have hired you. Which I thought was kind of an odd comment. But
interesting.
Yeah, but regardless, and so there's always a balance, on our profession. But at the same time, I think, it's kind of like people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care, right? And so as an employer, if they know you care about them and that you've always invested in them, that at the end, when there is, opportunity for you as owner, most of them will be happy for you.
That reminded me, as we were talking about Lamborghini, who was Nick at your summit was talking about one of the builders who built the house for Drake. I forget his name, right?
Yeah.
And he pulled up in like a Lamborghini with his cheetah suit or whatever. It just reminded me of that. So I thought it was funny. That's awesome. Well,
I think he was a designer, actually.
Oh, was he the designer? Okay, cool. So
which they can do
makes
that.
A little more sense.
Designers and realtors can do that. It's tougher for us. We're more blue collar.
Yeah, exactly. That's fantastic. Well, basically, I was wanting to kind of dissect different areas through your kind of journey, because obviously you have, you've been in business, 13 years, but at what point did your business actually start creating its name for itself? Like when you started to really get known?
Yeah, I think it was probably, fortunately for us, Instagram started taking off. And for me, it's really tough to compete. When I started my company, I didn't have, there were certain projects I was trying to chase and architects and designers trying to work with, and really couldn't make any headway in their office and getting, to the desk of the owner to get work reciprocated. And so it got to the point where I'm like, okay, social media is an avenue for me. So I started publishing our work, the quality of our work, the thought leadership, why we do what we do. And I started building a reputation. So I'd say it's probably like 2018, 2019.
Okay.
The things started
picking up. 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, the people started seeing who we were, started making a little bit of a dent here in town, nationally.
Yeah.
And then you kind of get some signature projects, and then it kind of puts you on the map, and then we're here now. But it definitely was a long journey, and even to the point where we had to, it just takes time to build that reputation.
That's funny, and so I met with Alicia Taylor. She's a designer you work with, right? And she said, they've been doing some really big things, been around, 5 or 6 years, and there wasn't any point to what she said, but she had mentioned a time frame, and you're mentioning the same time frame. And it's funny that people don't ever get to see the whole back end of everything. Yeah. They don't get to see the inside of a business owner's life, the back end of what it took to build before you even got to be known for what you do, because it doesn't start from day one. So that's kind of why I was kind of dissecting a little bit of your life to really see how it's been for you as a business owner, as you've created one of the most renowned construction companies in the state of Arizona, probably the nation. So, it's been fantastic to see what you guys have done, and you've been a great example for me and our company. It's been absolutely phenomenal. So, well, I want to thank you for coming on today. So, it's been absolutely...
I do want to ask a question while we're talking about the name and building a name for yourself. I'm curious, and I know RJ's curious. We've talked about it 100 times. When building a name for yourself, obviously branding is huge, and the whole entire title of your company is in lowercase. Did you do that on purpose, and how come?
So I'll answer that. Do you want me to lead into it?
Yeah, okay. I'm actually curious.
Well, do you want to ask it, how you edit this? I don't know how you edit it.
Go ahead.
Or just answer.
It's free flow.
I think we're okay. You're good.
So so the logo here. So what's interesting, a Finder Test Construction. So this is kind of funny when you think about marketing. Like, I'm kind of obsessed with marketing, right? Uh-huh. And so when you see our branding, like here we have the A, then there's an F and a T, right? It's all awesome. So we get a lot of comments just on the logo, A and F and T all together. But the funny thing is, whenever you have an alphabetical order list, which happens in voting best builder, it happens in different charts. If you have a company that's like AAA, like AAA, A and then a space and then Finder always puts you number one.
Interesting.
So if you start your company with an A and then a space, you're always going to be in any list number one, always.
Interesting.
And so that's kind of the core. Now, all lowercase just happens to be that because it's just kind of clean. I have another modern logo. We've done a few different logos and colors. This, of course, blends with the shirt.
Yeah.
But at the core, it's just, that's kind of the theme. And we actually just went through a rebrand. A few months ago, we rebuilt our website, and you can see the color palette.
By the way.
Yeah, so our new website, we kind of have a whole new palette.
Yeah.
And then we've taken those colors and updated our logo too, and just kind of to match where the company is now. But at the core of it, it's like creating a logo that people remember and see, and and then
guys
always be at the
killed
top
it.
of the list. So
I'm actually very jealous of your logo. I'm like, dude, it flows so perfectly.
yeah, people, it's funny when they see it, they're like, whoa, because like this one's all the same color, most of them are the two colors.
Yeah.
So then it sticks out, there's an F and a T and an A, like AFT, it's like
clean.
perfect.
Did you come up with that logo?
No, it was actually Renee Clark, who was one of my employees' spouses.
Really?
At the time, came up with it when we first started. But I knew from the beginning where it kept coming out, okay, and it flows into like, a touch above the competition, which is kind of our tagline. So it's just, we've had some fun with it. So.
Well, kind of go on branding real quick. So a lot of business owners, like we talked about State 48, you've seen my truck. A lot of people wrap their vehicles, right?
Yeah.
It's a big, you don't have a wrap.
Just a clean logo.
Why?
Because it's elegance. Like, it's just clean. Like, we're not, it's a finer touch, like, touch above the competition. Like, it's clean. People see the logo, and we want them to see it and be like, I know that's a luxury brand. It's a luxury look. Like, and there's nothing wrong with the full wrap. It's just it doesn't fit
you guys.
It just doesn't fit us. It doesn't fit our marketing strategy. It doesn't fit the clean, sleek style that we're
Makes
going.
sense.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
so
makes
there's nothing
sense.
against it. It's just that this is just you need to make sure that your branding aligns on everything.
Company,
from like our email signatures. If anyone's emails, like our email signatures have our photos and they have all the links to website and the podcast and our social media, and our business cards are all electric. The website, and it all matches our documents that we send out. All of our our document control, from
Everything's
contracts
aligned.
and everything. It's all aligned with the branding and colors and
Amazing.
to the website. So for us, it's just that clean look all the way around.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, is that your only question, Kyle?
Yes.
Obviously, you guys can see we're taking advantage of having Brad here. It's been awesome to learn from you. So we want to thank you for coming on, guys. Brad has a podcast, Brad Leavitt podcast. So
Yeah,
he
just
just rebranded,
rebranded,
right? So
yeah.
it was AFT Construction Podcast, right?
Yeah, it was.
And then people are like, we want to know more than
Yeah.
construction from you,
Yeah.
which means you have a lot to share. And it's an amazing podcast. I highly recommend everybody to go check it out. The links are going to be below to his Instagram, his LinkedIn, to his podcast as well. And you can also find it on the bottom header of your website, I believe.
Yeah,
There's a
it's
link
all there. Everything's on the website.
definitely check it out. You can check out our stuff as well. Our links are going to be posted below. And more than anything, we appreciate you guys joining and listening to our podcast. Again, we're all here. It's a big family. So if you guys have any questions, any comments, drop them below. And we can answer those questions on our Q&As as well. And thanks for joining the homework assignment.